You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your Security Plus certification journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Effective security controls can be thought of as the specific measures organizations put in place to reduce risk in a cost-effective and purposeful way. A control may be technical, like a firewall rule or encryption standard, or procedural, like requiring two-person approval for financial transactions. What makes a control effective is not just its existence, but how well it mitigates the intended risk without introducing unnecessary burden. For example, requiring biometric authentication on every system might sound secure, but if it disrupts operations and drives employees toward insecure workarounds, it may not be effective. True effectiveness balances security outcomes with practicality. The starting point for selecting security controls is a thorough risk assessment. This involves identifying organizational assets, understanding the threats they face, and evaluating vulnerabilities that might be exploited. By quantifying or categorizing risks, security teams can determine which risks demand mitigation and which controls are best suited to address them. For example, if a company identifies customer data as its most valuable asset and phishing as a primary threat, controls like email filtering, user awareness training, and multi-factor authentication may be prioritized. Without grounding selection in risk assessment, organizations risk deploying controls that look impressive but fail to address the most pressing threats. Security controls are often grouped into categories that help clarify their purpose. Preventive controls aim to stop incidents before they happen, such as access restrictions or encryption. Detective controls identify incidents as they occur or after, like intrusion detection systems or log monitoring. Corrective controls help restore normal operations after a security event, including patching or system recovery. Compensating controls serve as alternatives when primary measures aren't possible, such as using strong monitoring when multi-factor authentication cannot be deployed. Directive controls guide behavior, such as policies or training. Recognizing these categories ensures organizations build a balanced defense that doesn't lean too heavily on any single type. Control mapping is the process of linking controls directly to identified threats and critical assets. This ensures that every control has a clear purpose rather than being implemented simply because it is industry standard or vendor recommended. For example, mapping a web application firewall to the threat of SQL injection ensures that its deployment directly reduces the risk associated with critical web servers. Mapping also highlights gaps where threats lack sufficient mitigation, guiding additional control investment. By aligning controls to actual risks and assets, organizations avoid scattershot deployments and ensure every measure contributes to reducing meaningful exposure. Cost-benefit and business impact analysis are vital when selecting controls because no organization has unlimited resources. Security must compete with other business priorities, and investments must be justified in terms of reduced risk or avoided loss. For instance, investing in full-disk encryption for employee laptops carries costs in software, deployment, and performance overhead, but the benefit is protecting sensitive data if a laptop is lost or stolen. Comparing costs to benefits ensures rational decision-making, preventing overinvestment in low-impact risks, while highlighting areas where even costly controls may be worthwhile given the potential consequences of a breach. The maturity of both the control itself and the organization's readiness to adopt it should also guide selection. Some controls require advanced processes, skilled staff, or cultural buy-in to be effective. For example, deploying a sophisticated security information and event management SIEM platform in a small company without dedicated analysts may result in alerts being ignored. A more mature organization with established monitoring teams may extract real value from the same tool. Assessing maturity helps organizations avoid adopting controls they cannot yet support, instead focusing on achievable steps while planning for long-term improvements. Feasibility and operational impact are equally important criteria. Some controls, while technically sound, may be impractical given the business environment. For example, enforcing strict whitelisting of applications may be feasible in a manufacturing setting with standardized software, but far less practical in a creative agency where new tools are constantly introduced. Operational impact examines whether a control hinders productivity, customer experience, or critical workflows. Effective controls integrate smoothly with operations, providing protection without excessive friction. By considering feasibility and impact, security leaders ensure that controls enhance rather than undermine organizational performance. Prioritization frameworks help organizations choose which controls to implement first when resources are limited. These frameworks may rely on risk scores which quantify likelihood and impact, or on qualitative assessments of criticality and exploitability. For example, addressing an unpatched vulnerability in an internet-facing server may be prioritized over implementing new internal logging features because the external threat is more immediate and severe. Prioritization ensures that controls are not deployed randomly, but follow a structured roadmap that maximizes security gains in the shortest time. It allows decision-makers to allocate limited resources intelligently and transparently. Compensating controls provide a safety net when ideal measures are not feasible. For instance, if an organization cannot implement multi-factor authentication due to legacy systems, it may compensate by enforcing strict monitoring, strong password policies, and reduced account lifetimes. While not as strong as the primary control, compensating measures reduce risk to acceptable levels while longer-term solutions are planned. Accepting compensating controls requires careful documentation and acknowledgement that some residual risk remains. This approach highlights the practical nature of security, finding workable solutions that maintain protection even when perfect options are unavailable. Measurable objectives and key performance indicators, KPIs, are essential for evaluating whether controls deliver their intended outcomes. Without metrics, organizations cannot determine if investments are effective or need adjustment. For example, a phishing awareness program might set a KPI of reducing click rates on simulated phishing emails by 50% within a year. Firewalls might be measured by the number of blocked, unauthorized connections. Clear metrics provide feedback loops, ensuring that controls remain relevant and tuned to evolving threats. They also provide evidence to stakeholders that security investments produce tangible results. Governance and accountability define who is responsible for each control's implementation, operation, and maintenance. Controls that lack ownership risk becoming neglected or outdated. For instance, an encryption standard may exist on paper, but if no one is responsible for monitoring compliance, devices may quietly drift out of policy. Assigning control ownership ensures accountability, while governance structures like security committees provide oversight. This formal responsibility transforms controls from static requirements into actively managed safeguards, integrated into everyday operations. Without governance, even well-designed controls can erode in effectiveness over time. Ultimately, the process of selecting controls should be repeatable, documented, and risk-driven. Documenting the rationale for each control builds institutional knowledge and supports audits or regulatory inquiries. Repeatability ensures that the same process is applied consistently rather than ad hoc decisions based on individual judgment. Risk-driven selection grounds decisions in business priorities rather than trends or vendor influence. For example, selecting a new intrusion prevention system should trace back to documented risk assessments and cost-benefit analysis. By following a disciplined process, organizations ensure their control environment remains coherent, defensible, and aligned with long-term resilience goals. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Layering and redundancy are fundamental principles in building effective security. Relying on a single control creates a fragile defense because attackers only need to bypass one barrier. By combining multiple, complementary controls, organizations reduce the likelihood of a successful breach. For example, email security can be layered through spam filtering, malware scanning, and user awareness training. Even if a phishing message slips past filters, the layered defenses reduce the chance it succeeds. Redundancy also protects against control failure. If one measure fails due to misconfiguration or outage, others remain in place to continue providing protection. Validating the effectiveness of controls ensures they work as intended and remain relevant over time. This involves structured testing, such as penetration tests or red team exercises, alongside routine audits and reviews. Metrics, such as the percentage of attacks blocked or the reduction in incident response times, provide measurable insight into performance. For instance, a firewall rule may be tested by simulating an unauthorized connection attempt, verifying it is denied. Without validation, controls risk becoming symbolic, providing the illusion of security without real protection. Regular validation turns policies into proven, trustworthy defenses rather than paper-based requirements. Automation offers powerful opportunities to scale controls and minimize human error. Many security failures occur because controls are inconsistently applied or misconfigured. Automation ensures that controls are deployed consistently and respond rapidly to threats. For example, automated patch management applies updates across thousands of devices without relying on manual intervention, reducing vulnerability exposure. Similarly, automated account deprovisioning ensures that when an employee leaves, their access is revoked immediately. By embedding automation, organizations strengthen reliability while freeing staff to focus on higher-level analysis and strategy, making security more resilient and efficient. Continuous improvement recognizes that security controls must evolve alongside threats and organizational changes. Regular review cycles assess whether controls remain effective, while tuning adjusts parameters to reduce false positives or address new risks. For example, an intrusion detection system may initially generate too many alerts, but through tuning and feedback it becomes more precise over time. This process prevents stagnation, ensuring controls remain adaptive and effective. Improvement cycles also create a feedback loop between incidents and control refinement, allowing organizations to learn from failures and continually raise the bar against attackers. Cultural and training elements sustain the effectiveness of procedural and directive controls. Written policies or runbooks only work if employees understand and follow them. Training ensures awareness of why controls exist and how to comply with them. For example, enforcing a directive control like a clean desk policy requires that staff understand its purpose in protecting sensitive data. Culture amplifies controls by embedding security into daily habits, creating an environment where compliance feels natural rather than burdensome. Without cultural reinforcement, even the best-designed policies may degrade into check-the-box exercises with little real impact. Vendor and third-party assessments provide external perspectives on control effectiveness. Independent audits, penetration tests, and compliance certifications validate whether controls align with industry standards and regulatory requirements. For example, a payment processor may undergo a PCI DSS audit to confirm that its security controls meet mandated protections. These assessments also highlight blind spots internal teams may overlook, providing valuable insights for continuous improvement. Trusting but verifying through third-party validation ensures that security claims are backed by evidence and builds confidence with customers, regulators, and partners alike. Lifecycle management ensures that controls remain effective throughout their existence, from implementation to maintenance and eventual retirement. Controls must be monitored to confirm they function correctly, patched or updated to address new threats, and decommissioned when obsolete. For example, an antivirus solution that no longer receives updates becomes ineffective and may even create a false sense of security. Lifecycle management formalizes these stages, ensuring controls are never left unattended or outdated. This process transforms controls from static purchases into dynamic investments that evolve alongside the organization and the threat landscape. Documentation, runbooks, and playbooks tied to each control are crucial for operational reliability. Documentation explains why a control exists, how it is configured, and how it should be maintained. Runbooks provide step-by-step guidance for routine tasks, while playbooks detail responses to specific incidents. For example, a firewall playbook might outline how to respond if critical rules are inadvertently removed. These resources ensure continuity, allowing staff to operate consistently and reducing reliance on individual knowledge. When controls are supported by strong documentation, they remain resilient even as personnel change or emergencies arise. Metrics measuring return on investment, ROI, and risk reduction help justify security controls to business stakeholders. ROI may be difficult to calculate directly, but organizations can assess avoided losses, reduced incident frequency, or improved compliance outcomes. For example, a data loss prevention (DLP) solution might reduce the number of sensitive data leaks by 70%, demonstrating tangible value. Risk reduction metrics, such as lowering the likelihood of a critical vulnerability being exploited, provide a risk-focused lens. By translating security outcomes into measurable business terms, security leaders gain support for ongoing investments. Escalation and governance paths define what happens when controls fail or exceptions are necessary. No control is perfect, and organizations must prepare for failures or situations where exceptions are temporarily required. For instance, if a patch management system malfunctions, escalation paths ensure the issue is addressed quickly and transparently. Governance defines who can authorize exceptions, for how long, and under what conditions. Documenting these processes ensures accountability and prevents abuse. By planning for imperfection, organizations preserve resilience and avoid ad hoc decision-making under pressure. Ultimately, selecting controls is a pragmatic process that balances risk, cost, and operational realities. Perfection is unattainable, but well-chosen controls provide measurable reductions in risk without stifling the business. By layering defenses, validating effectiveness, integrating automation, and sustaining cultural support, organizations build systems that adapt to change and resist failure. Documentation, governance, and lifecycle management reinforce reliability. Security controls, when chosen thoughtfully and maintained diligently, are not static barriers, but living components of resilience. They allow organizations to embrace technology confidently, knowing risks are actively managed rather than ignored. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.